Okay, without further ado, Kerry Edelstein. Come on up.
All right, and I've actually been a member of Ladies Who Brunch probably since like the first year, because I think I joined in 2003. I was part of the Rita Flora crowd back when I used to live like 2 blocks from Rita Flora. That was really convenient. I know traditionally we introduce ourselves as being this, so I'm going to do that, and then afterwards, please come introduce yourself to me, because I know like 6 or 7 of you guys, but there's some new faces to me, and I want to meet all of you guys. So please make sure you come up and introduce yourself afterwards if we don't have time to do that. And then the other caveat I'll say is that, you know, normally when I give presentations in my line of work, I'm a market research consultant. I usually have like this big PowerPoint, you know, screen behind me, and I can show cool charts and data. And I have some of that here because despite being a market researcher, I'm actually really bad at memorizing statistics. And my skill set is looking at the information and figuring out what to do with it and what that means for the industry and where to take that. So I have cheat sheets here for myself, but I sent the information to Karen, so she's going to put it up on the website afterwards. So if you actually want to look at sort of the full, more formal version of what I'm probably going to totally freestyle right now, that'll be available after this. So a little bit about who I am and what I'm doing. And just eat, don't feel bad about eating in the middle of this. I can talk over chewing. A little bit about me. I have a 15-year career in market research, the last 10 of which have been exclusively in media and entertainment. I sort of consider my sweet spot to be really looking at the audience perspective of things. What do consumers think? How are they consuming media? What does that mean? Both creatively and from a business standpoint. I actually got into media research because I grew up in performing arts. I was like in 5 different musical groups growing up. I did musical theater. I was the editor of my high school yearbook and my business school newspaper. And I kind of actually came up through the creative world, but I was also a math geek, and this was sort of the intersection of those 2 things for me. And there was actually Jenny York, another LWB member, wrote this whole profile on like how I actually got into my career and how that hybrid actually came to be, and it was totally by accident, but kind of the perfect intersection of what I love to do in my free time and what I was good at in school, and I guess that's how it came to be. But I've always felt like as a researcher, the creative process and the creative strength of content is really important to me. So everything I look at kind of comes through that framework of like, why do audiences love and adopt content? Why is content compelling? And there are certainly best practices to that, but there's also a point at which, in my mind as a researcher, you step back and you kind of look at what's going on and why are people falling in love with this, you know? And it's almost platform agnostic in a sense. So that's kind of my brand as a researcher. I know data, I can do data, I'm pretty analytical, but I also really believe in the creative strength and that side of it. So I wanted to spend some time talking today about some of the myths, and one of my clients calls it myths and mania. A lot of times you hear, especially inside the industry, these things that are sort of taken as truth, that if you actually look at the audience perspective, are a bit of a hyperbole. And so I thought it'd be fun to sort of take some time to talk about some of the myths that I hear in the industry and some of the facts that are actually what research would support. And it's interesting to me. My favorite one, I have more of a background in television. That's kind of how I got in through all of this. I've done work in film. I do a lot of work in digital now because all these things have intersected. But my greatest expertise, I would say, is in television. And it's always fascinating to me. I remember a couple years ago, I was at a networking event. It's called Mindshare. It's sort of like TEDx or one of those kind of events. And I met this guy who was 26 or 27 years old. He was a grad student, and he was also blogging for a tech website at the time. And one of my friends introduced us and was like, oh, he does stuff in media, you guys should meet, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing out of this guy's mouth when I told him what I did for a living was, oh, nobody watches TV anymore. And I was like, you're a blogger in the industry? Like, I hope you're not writing that down. So I was like, have you been to Best Buy lately? Entire room of televisions, you know? And I just thought that was fascinating that there's this sort of myth that gets perpetuated inside the technology world that TV has gone away. And that's very much not the case. Actually, people watch 5 hours a day on average of television. Like, it's still the #1 media platform. What's starting to change, and I think this is really fascinating, is the world has gone from multitasking television. So 5 to 10 years ago, when you looked at what people were doing with television, they were doing their laundry, they were watching their kids, they were paying their bills, they were cooking dinner, they were eating in front of the TV. They were always multitasking something else. TV has always been a companion tool inside the household. It's also a family kind of structure inside the household. What started to change over the past 2 to 3 years is that multitasking includes media multitasking. And there was actually this fascinating article I read, and here's my funny small world story. There was a professor at Boston College who did this research on how people multitask the internet with television. And he did this, I think, in 2009, so it's a little bit pre-iPad and pre-smartphones blowing up. But he had people, he gave them a laptop, a television set, a remote, a DVR with all their favorite shows, and said, do whatever you want for half an hour. And then he observed it and actually tracked what they were watching. The technology is called eye tracking. You can actually see where people are looking, and up and down you can track their gaze. And he observed this and collected all the information and then wrote a white paper about it, which I happened to find through a Google search. Well, the fascinating thing about the white paper, it showed that people changed their gaze on average every 14 seconds. So when you have a laptop. So basically, I'm reading this and I'm thinking, oh my God, that means they're paying attention to nothing. And in the meantime, I, as a consultant, have been telling my TV clients, oh yeah, you want to engage people on multiple platforms, so toss them to the web and get them to be interacting with the web. And now I'm thinking, reading this white paper, don't toss them to the web till the end of the show. Make sure they watch your show before you toss them to the web, because once they're there, they stop paying attention to both. And I thought that was really fascinating. Here's my small world story about this is my world in the entertainment industry. About a month and a half ago now, I was at Coachella with a group of friends, and we all rented this big house. There were about a dozen of us staying there, and I'm talking to this guy I'd never met who'd flown in from Boston, who was my friend's roommate in grad school. And he's talking about what he does, and I'm like, that sounds awfully familiar. Where do you work? Boston College. I was like, and you do media research. I'm like, what's your last name? He was the author of the white paper. So in a small world, so hopefully I'll be doing a collaboration with him on some of that media multitasking stuff. But I think it sort of speaks to this interesting trend that's going on now in the household, which is it's not that people aren't adopting traditional media anymore. You still see radio really strong. You still see television really, really strong. What's happened is that it's fragmented. So we've gone from having, 20 years ago, 5 to 10 cable networks to having several hundred cable networks. In the last couple years, what you've started to see is that things that we prognosticated 5 years ago would be a competitor to television have actually integrated with television. So that's like Netflix and Hulu Plus. You're seeing these things, instead of just going head to head, they're actually integrating into the TV set. And the fascinating thing to me about something like Netflix is that it's built its business model now, as it's moved away from DVD to streaming, around TV content instead of movie content. So that's become a big transition. They've actually embraced this first platform of television and used it as what might actually compete more with syndication than it will with first-run programming. So, and it's interesting to me because I remember when I first started working in television, specifically back in like 2003, 2004, there were a lot of people predicting that TV would go away by today. By 2010, nobody's going to be watching TV anymore. It's all going to be on your laptop. And I always thought, well, fundamentally, that shows a lack of understanding of the psychology of consumption. If you actually look at why people are watching TV, I mentioned family. That's like the #1 thing people do with television. It is a social kind of engagement. It's not a one-on-one thing the way a laptop might be or an iPad might be. And it's really interesting. I do a lot of focus groups around the country with viewers of different TV shows, especially in the cable space. And one of the things that always strikes me as fascinating is we'll program shows to a specific demographic. So I'll give you an example of something I worked on last week. It was a comedy show targeting women 25 to 40, I would say, is the sweet spot. And it airs at 11 o'clock at night. So they thought, we know this is going to be something that's going to have some R-rated content. It's going to be a little bit edgy. We can't air this when kids could possibly be watching it. So it airs at 11 o'clock on Sunday nights. Well, I can't tell you, every single woman that walked into that room, I would say 9 out of 10 were moms in that age range. That's definitely that's the mom age range. And it's the mom of young kids age range. So they don't have teenagers yet. They have infants to 10-year-olds for the most part. And every single one of them started protesting the content. Oh my gosh, I can't watch that. My kids might see it. Well, what if it were on 11 o'clock? I still don't feel entirely comfortable. I DVR things. I watch them at other times. Kid might make up, walk into the room. And there was this sort of sense of TV is a family type of consumption. And maybe I'll watch this in my bedroom with my husband late at night, but for the most part, TV is a communal experience. And it's sort of interesting to me if you sort of think about that general psychology of how we consume media. And you kind of rewind back to 2004 when everyone was predicting it would go away. Well, it can't go away unless you remove the desire for the communal experience from people's human nature. And that's not happening. We still crave that communal experience. And that's where you sort of circle back to what actually happened, which is media multitasking, which is that you've got your teenager sitting on the couch with the iPad, you know, with the smartphone in the other hand, you know, spouse is on the couch with the laptop and the TV is on, you know, and you're all consuming something at the same time, but you're doing it in the same room. And then where that goes is the second step is sometimes it's the same person. You know, I mean, who here has caught themselves watching TV with a laptop or iPad and their phone? Right? I do it almost every night. You know? Yeah, and so that's really where the industry has gone, to this place of media multitasking. And to me, I always ask, you know, and it's the number one thing I think we haven't solved as an industry that I'm most fascinating is, what do you do about that? You know, what does that mean for your loyalty to content in the long run? You know, I think about, you know, my own behavior sometimes, and as I'll be watching, you know, a show like a Mad Men or anything that really requires your focus, I have to shut my laptop and put my phone away, because I can't follow the story unless I do. I'm literally intellectually not able to pay attention to the show unless I put the other stuff away. And then I think to myself, well, does everybody else? I recognize that because I work in it. It's what I do for a living. But most people don't, you know, analyze media behavior for a living and don't stop to think about it while they're consuming it. What does that mean for content in the long run, that we are doing multiple things at once? What are the things that we actually are able to multitask successfully? And what are the things that we're not able to multitask successfully? And ultimately, what platforms win when you're doing multiple things? So the other thing that came out is the white paper that I was telling you about, was that people actually paid more attention to their computer than they paid to the TV set. And that to me was actually really alarming as somebody who recognizes, one, that TV is sort of the legacy platform and where I get a lot of my business, but two, it's where the money is still. You know, I mean, anybody who's worked in digital knows sort of the phrase, you know, traditional dollars, digital dimes. And it's not, that's not fiction. That's actually pretty true, you know? And so I'm sitting here thinking, gosh, if digital's getting all of our attention, that's going to draw people away. That's going to draw attention away from TV, and at some point, advertisers are going to get that. And the you know, it's called CPMs. The cost that advertising sells on TV is going to go down, not just because of DVR, but because people aren't remembering the advertising, because their focus is on their laptop the second it goes to the ad. So you're not going to catch it on a fast forward. You're not going to, you know, catch it on a change channel, because they're not changing the channel or fast forwarding. They're ignoring, you know, and so it's not being captured by Nielsen data. But the industry is starting to get hip to that. If I had one prediction, it said over the next 5 years, and it's not going to happen immediately. Nothing happens that immediately. Over the next 5 years, advertisers will start to realize that the internet is taking people's attention away from TV. And so what's our, as a TV industry, what's the move to get people back into paying attention to television and getting them so wrapped up in it that the computer's not actually on. You know, it's not on until the end of the show. So that's what is the interesting thing to me about the media multitasking thing.